Well, good evening, everyone. Sunday afternoon, I took a little field trip to the Sandy Point State Park in Maryland on the western shore of the Chesapeake Bay near the Bay Bridge, and hadn't been there since 2008, and it's near Annapolis. And a couple other pictures, and then here's a couple of things. That's with a Sony camera. And I'll get to my next picture. That's me talking, but let me in Minnesota in 1998. But yeah, one of the things getting into the park, um, the attendant wasn't there, and everybody was having trouble putting either cash or credit cards into the machine. We had a hard time getting it work, so it was very slow getting in. I finally got three $1 bills stuff in, but they didn't have an attendant, and the machine wasn't working getting into the park very well. So there was a bit of a line. But it was a beautiful day, much cooler than in the city around the bay. And hadn't been there in a long time. So, in fact, I could even show you the jet. It's right here. It's right there. And the park is right about there, I think, right up there. And then when I was a child, we would go to Ocean City in June every year for a number of years with another family. And we would take in those days, the Bay Bridge hadn't been built yet, and we would take a ferry from about here. And I was fascinated, the car would go into the ferry. I was fascinated you couldn't see across the bay until you were halfway across. But that's kind of a childhood memory. And we just want to talk about something a little bit serious. Um, it's with all that's going on in the world, with the war particularly, and the employees of the TSA not being paid and other federal employees not being paid because of political partisanship. Um, it's a very distracting time. For me, I'm trying to make this business as usual, and I'm trying to get my fourth Do Ask Do Tell book out. Um, I've got pretty much most of it all written, 9 chapters, and pretty well edited. I'm going to talk to the people I want to publish with tomorrow. I don't want this to take any longer than, let's say, the 2nd of April, which would be a week from Thursday, to get this to them and get it out by June, get it available. And I think I'm spending an awful lot of time on that, just like I was spending a lot of time on before on getting down to Williamsburg. You've seen some of that tape. And but it's business. The only thing I can do is do my own stuff. My life has not been interfered with very much, other than slightly higher the gas prices. I'm not driving that much anymore. That was only about 40 miles. As getting older, I'm not driving as much, and trying to learn to use the bus and use train and use, even not flying, but trying to get used to using buses and trains more in the last year or so. I took that train trip to Chicago last summer. Um, so, but yeah, the I don't. One of the most unacceptable things for me at my age is to be forced to take a side publicly and make that look like that was who I was, to be part of one identity one side particularly obsessed with identity or the other. And that just isn't acceptable to me. To me, everything is an individual matter. If something happens to me because somebody's mad or Trump does something or somebody will come after me or something, and it would still be on me. The most important thing is when I'm 82 is the last years of my life be honorable, and it's not honorable to have to join somebody else's side because you're forced to or something. That would be very dishonorable. And I understand the indignation of a lot of people. I think one of the problems um, with Trump and particularly with the immigration and ICE and everything, is that, yeah, I mean, a lot of previous presidents have not been, they've done a lot of deportations. Biden did, and Obama did, and so forth. But previous presidents have allowed people to, have been willing to overlook and forgive small infractions of the law or small problems. And Trump is going after anybody who's here who makes the slightest mistake. Is willing to revoke your being here. It's very easy to leave if you forget to show up for a regular interview for a green card. There are all kinds of reasons you can get in trouble. And a lot of people are just not as careful, have not been as careful as they should be. And from my point of view, to be expected to take a side to defend them would be defending breaking the law. It actually would. And that's very hard. I know about empathy and everything, and but then you're back into who is oppressed and who is the oppressor, and I'm just not willing to do things that way. So I'm trying to ignore the politics as much as possible and do what I have to do. I just hope I'm, allowed to finish everything. I think there could come a time when, you know, people, individuals like me, might not be as allowed to post their own thoughts online where others will find them and without paying their dues somehow, either belonging to an organization or having skin in the game, having dependents, or showing that their activity is commercially viable, can actually support making a living. I think that day could be coming. And the way I did things, largely for free, even though I had books, but the blog access and everything was free. And I had 16 blogs on Blogger, and then for 16 years, and until the start of 2022, and I had 4 more on WordPress, um, 4 of them for 2 of them for 8 years, and the other 2 for 6 years, and they were very effective in their own time. But it got to a point where there were concerns I had about using my name and nickname and trademark, and a variety of things I was concerned about might come up. And so I decided to scale back and revert just back to using my own name for a while and scale way back in the start of 2022. And then I built up my YouTube channel a little bit and gotten some, particularly with reading my screenplay, the screenplay of my expulsion from William and Mary in 1961, that the short film called An Expulsion, that's gotten some attention from people. That seems to get people's attention when I present it. And of course, I think I showed you this. I've presented segments from this oral history interview that I did February 4. I've presented a lot of it on YouTube. in other posts that you can look up. And so, um, um, that was the other big activity, was to get down and do that oral history film. It's almost like a 3-hour movie with me talking. If I can put some pictures on it and edit it and professional, I could have myself almost a movie. It might, for very low cost. But I'd like to make an acted film, would be particularly the expulsion and the aftermath of it would be a very interesting thing. I think if you could, it would have an impact and it would get attention in the festivals and so forth. If you could do it on location in Williamsburg. Of course, the studio, the indoor scenes you can do anywhere. Do them at Austin, Texas, a pretty good place to make movies now. Maybe that's where you would do it. But I think it would have an impact if I could pull that off, and I'm still very interested. So I'm following my own purposes. I'm not joining somebody's side just because the world is falling apart and we all have to stick together and stand together and protest. There is, so I don't march and protest, but I will film them once in a while. I'll film little clips of them. I think there's a No Kings protest in Arlington, Virginia on Saturday along Glebe Road or something. I don't know the details. We'll have to look that up. But that's what I've got for tonight, for today. Trying to keep it as business as usual, and that's the way it is right now. And I do thank you for listening.